Am I a gaffer or a good boy or a big boy or whatever they
Best
call it?
boy.
Best boy.
Let's not go into
No one's
this.
ever said that to me before.
No, I really hope not. Hello and welcome to the Lib Dem podcast. It's myself, John Potter, with, as always, Councillor Richard Kemp. How you doing, Richard?
Fine, nice to see you all, and you can see us this time.
Yes, so we've
probably is not an advantage.
We've
there,
put
John.
shirts on, and I've got rid of the sandals.
Oh,
so
have you?
yes, that's
yes, he's got rid of the sandals.
Yeah,
all right.
just special. So we might have a guest appearance by my dog Bosley. There's no controlling him whatsoever. So if he does roll in, or you hear heavy panting or growling, that isn't us talking about Brexit. This is just my dog being not controllable. But we will start with some of the latest news for this episode, I think, because there's been loads going on.
Yeah.
Should we start with... Well, let's deal with the one involving yourself, Richard, because I think last time we spoke, your intention was to stand for party president.
Yeah.
And you are now not doing so. So maybe you'd like to talk about that to start with.
Yeah, well, there are two reasons for that. One is that a member of my family has an undiagnosed condition, which is worrying and which would basically mean I've got to spend more time in Liverpool.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I feel I've given a lot of service to the party, and my family's been very supportive, and I have to be supportive in turn. Now, it might be that in a month's time I have found that I could have stood, but I wasn't going to stand and then pull out halfway, and I certainly didn't want to get elected and then
have to resign. Yeah, that's
so
right.
I've tried to do it. And then the other thing, which perhaps we'll talk about in a slightly different way later, is that I was the parliamentary candidate for Wavertree, then I wasn't, and now I am again.
Right, okay. It's like hokey cokey.
Yeah, a bit like hokey cokey. And there is a feeling that if you look at the constituencies that voted quite heavily Remain, you tie that into the situation with the Labour Party in Liverpool, which is quite dire in a way, that perhaps I ought to be spending more time in Wavertree, both for the parliamentary election and because the opportunities are opening up for us in Liverpool for the mayoral, the PEC, EPC, whatever it is.
The Police and Crime Commission.
Yeah, that's right. PCC,
yes,
that's right. The regional mayor, so we've got 4 elections next year.
That's exciting.
Yeah. You've only got 3, haven't you?
We've only got 2. We're very lucky. So, well, unless a general election's called at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe you might have 5. I just want to talk a little bit about what is the role of the president, because everyone knows about the leaders, about the MPs, the MEPs, but what's the function of the president?
Well, that has changed dramatically, and thank goodness we've had a really good one for the last few years in Sal Brinton. In some ways, Sal has had to be an extra MP when we were down to 8, then 12. Luxury of 19 now makes it slightly different. So, for example, when by-elections were held, instead of the leader or the deputy leader being able to go, who would go and rally the troops? The president would.
And it's that sort of role. It's kind of if the leader is more about making sure the MEPs and we do the kind of air war, then the president is about the ground war, making sure the troops are motivated.
Yes.
How is the party working from the ground up?
Yes, absolutely. So the president's official role, more than anything else, is to chair the federal board, and the federal board is, or should be, the engine of the entire party. When you think about it now, we've got something north of 120,000 members, probably, I understand, 20 to 25,000 supporters. And as well as that, there's a whole number of people who do loads of stuff for us who aren't either.
Yeah, that's right.
Of those.
I mean, we've both got leafleters and volunteers who are neither and are invaluable to the party.
And they give us some money, they do the business for us. And when you think about that, that is a huge enterprise. Let's convert it to full-time equivalents and say there's something like 40,000 full-time equivalents, which it probably wouldn't be far short now, bearing in mind that some people like you and I are almost full-time.
Or beyond full-time sometimes.
Or beyond certainly standard 37.5 hours.
Absolutely.
That's just the weekend, isn't it?
I do remember one of our councillors who's now retired and is an alderman of the city tried to work out how much he was getting paid per hour
Yeah.
for being, and it was below £1 an hour,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
if he was to try and work it out.
Yeah, well, probably a bit more generous in Liverpool, but I certainly don't get the minimum wage.
These rich metropolitan areas, I don't know.
They just have to look after large numbers of people and have huge responsibilities.
No,
You
that
do
is
not have to go and welcome a cardinal coming home from Africa.
No,
today.
that's true. But I do have to go and give an opening at the pie shop. No, I don't really. I was just doing a northern joke for the southerners.
I'd swap you, a cardinal for a pie shop. And of course you don't have football clubs that do very well, so we have to be associated with two major Premier League clubs. And I think, is Preston North End still in a league somewhere?
I think. You see, you're asking me football questions. I'm not, but no, I do know. North End are in the Championship, so they're not. And of course, the only football club to still have its ground in its original location.
Really?
From one of the first football clubs that were set up. So anyway, we have digressed somewhat from a president. So, so we have two candidates up. We have Mark Pack and we have Christine Jardin.
Yeah.
Who are I made a French sounding then.
Jardin.
How do you do?
She's Scottish.
Yeah.
Did that sound Scottish?
I don't know. It was something. Bosley snarled anyway. But both of them are kind of asking for different sorts of presidencies a little bit. But one thing I have a slight concern about is if you're an MP, do you have time to be a president? I know we've had them in the past with Tim Farron, etc.
Yeah.
But I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I think that is a wrong thing to do.
To stand as a president if you're an MP?
Yeah. If you're an MP, you have 100,000 people to look after. You will be, even if we were to quadruple our number of MPs, Christine will be a leading spokesperson. Yeah. She might be the Shadow Secretary for Scotland or Health or something like that. She has opportunities for getting on the news and doing things. And I think it is a wrong call for an MP to do it. I mean, Tim is quite clear about this. He did it because he wanted to be the leader.
Yeah, it gave him a profile, didn't it? Yeah.
So I think it's a wrong call. I will be supporting Mark Pack.
Yeah.
And it's up for other people to come to a decision about that. But I'm absolutely confident that Mark knows the bones of the party.
Yeah, and he was an organiser for Lynn Featherston's seat before we took it, I believe. And it is interesting. And one of the other concerns, particularly about a Scottish MP, is that whatever happens with Brexit, Scotland isn't going to be too far behind in terms of what happens to Scotland within the Union.
Yeah.
Now, it's not for me. She's got to make that judgment. It's not for me to make that judgment whether she can handle that workload, but it does give me pause for thought that actually she's already at the top table.
Yes.
And like we've already discussed, it's the president's role not to be at that top table, it's to make sure that the ground forces are where they should be.
It's to make sure the engine room is running.
Yeah, that's good. That's a better phrase.
Rather than being on the bridge.
Yeah.
Which just means, so the president straddles both those.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot to be done. Had I stood for the presidency, I was, as you might expect, would have been promoting very much the role of councillors within the party, the recognition that it's the work that we do almost street by street that builds up to wards by wards, which leads up to constituency by constituency.
And we'll talk about that because some of the comments we've had from listeners, which is really good to hear from, is actually we've had a personal one coming through, okay, I'm in a certain constituency, what should I do? And, you know, we're looking to build on, you know, new members, possible general election, what should I do? So we will talk about kind of a general election strategy a little bit later in this episode.
Yeah.
So the president, just to round up the kind of president bit a little bit, is that we understand unless there's a general election call straight away, ballot papers will be going out in late October.
Yeah.
Online ballot papers for anyone who's got an email address.
95% of us now, which is good.
And I think it's early November. I think there's not long
after
I think
we know by the middle of November.
Yeah, so, that's right. So I will be back, which is good. So, right.
But you can vote from...
I can vote from wherever. I will be taking my laptop and my phone. So, last time I checked, Japan still has very good internet connection.
They invented it.
Yes,
that's right. Look at the technology. That doesn't look too Japanese.
No, I think most of them are. We've certainly...
it looks German.
No, yeah, Sennheiser's German. Yeah, so there's bound to be some component.
Yeah,
bound to be. However, right, other news. Let's go on to other news, can we? And obviously, one thing that happens every time we're about to do a podcast is we get a defection.
Absolutely. Perhaps let's see if something comes tomorrow.
Why do you know something? Obviously,
no, I don't.
Because I have to confess, pod listeners were very disappointed we didn't get any early scoop that Luciana Berger was about to defect, even though we had a podcast just 2 days beforehand.
If you think I was going to annoy Joe Swinson, you've got another bloody thing coming. I'm not saying I'm scared of Joe Swinson.
I am.
In that case, I am as well.
No, but it's Heidi Allen. Heidi Allen has obviously defected from the independent group to the Liberal Democrats, kind of and again, it's another conservative, moderate conservative, who just doesn't recognise their party anymore. Yeah,
I thought people might be interested to know what happens.
Actually, that was actually something we were going to do. So please. I think lots of people would, because we've had the parliamentary candidate Ian for South Cambridgeshire, an area where we had incredible success in the local elections. We took back the council. So this is one seat where there could have been tensions between a local party.
And same in Totnes as well, where the candidate has stood down there. So what happens? Well, first of all, the MP has to go and be interviewed by Alistair Carmichael.
Yeah, the Chief Whip.
The Chief Whip. And I've talked to two of them now, and that isn't an easy job.
No.
Now, part of it is easier for Alistair because he's in the same building as them. He's seen how they voted.
Oh, I think he's had lots of practice by now. I think that's what it was going to say.
That's also true as well. And he doesn't make them go up to Orkney and Shetland to check how quickly they can do.
Well, that would show commitment.
But he's kinder than that. But he does know how they voted. He knows their speeches. Yeah. He's been getting a feel for how they've been going over a period of time. Not so much with the people that came from Change to Independent then to us, because that's quite a long period of time, but people like Philip Lee.
Yeah.
So the first thing is Alistair has to say, this person is a Lib Dem.
Yeah.
Then you get a phone call the next day. Now, in my case, Joe Swinson made a mistake.
Did she?
Because Joe Swinson rang me and told me, and then when Sal rang me later to tell me, I said, well, actually, I already know this.
Oh, no! Oh, no.
So, I'm sorry if I've dropped you in it twice, Joe. So you get a phone call.
So someone on the phone right now. Hang on.
As long as he's not Sal. So you get a phone call from Sal, and she wants to talk to the group leader, the parliamentary candidate and the party chair.
Right, okay.
And she says to them, this is what's happening, this is the process passed by the Chief Whip.
Individually, or did you get you all? And...
It was easy in our house, because...
you're all there, yeah. Okay, fair enough.
But yes, I think speed means that they have to do it individually. It just so happens that my wife and I live together.
Yeah,
doesn't have the requisite positions. And then you get asked very, very quickly to call a meeting of the local party or the local party executive.
Yeah.
And we were able to do it that night. There wasn't a full executive there. Yeah. It was a decision that was very easy for us because we'd already taken the in-principle decision not to stand against her.
You'd said that in a previous podcast, that's right.
So then saying that she should be a Lib Dem was dead easy. It had already been suggested to me that she probably wouldn't end up being the Wavertree candidate.
Yeah. Because she wants out of Liverpool. Was that because of because of the bad blood within Labour and her and things, rather than Liverpool being a terrible place, which is not what I was meaning.
No. We all Scousers knew what you meant. Where is Preston? I had to use the sat-nav to get here.
It is the centre of Britain.
Is it?
Geographically.
Well, I'm sure it is for geographical purposes. And I've been with her this morning, as it happens. And we were talking about some of the things she had to put up with, and they were absolutely vile.
Yeah.
And then we had the executive, and we unanimously agreed. So first of all, she became a Lib Dem MP.
Yeah.
Then she became Wavertree's Lib Dem MP.
Yeah.
So that was on, if I remember rightly, a Thursday. I went to see her on the Friday. We talked about how the councillors would work together, but again, that was easy for us because we've been doing it.
Yeah.
We've been talking about some of the policy positions that she wanted to deal with, and her strength is mental health, and I deal with health nationally, so I've been working with her on that. So it actually, for us, was a very easy process, and it was particularly easy, and I think this is true in the other cases, that we respected these people even though they were in other parties.
Yeah.
So, if it'd been Heidi Allen that I was talking to, because I look at these new entrants, Heidi, Luciana, Chucker, people
Sarah
like
Wollaston, brilliant
and you
people.
think, what calibre?
Yeah.
There's only 19 of them,
Yeah.
but they can just about outgun.
Everyone
Well, certainly outgun the Tories.
Yeah,
It just seems to be all over the place. So we've got people of real calibre, real commitment, people we can have an empathy with. But there is a process. So it has to be very quick, because as soon as these things start getting talked about, if you don't announce it, the press will.
Yeah.
So you do it very quickly.
I've actually been quite impressed that it hasn't been leaked too much, if you know what I mean. I think we've actually kept the local parties and the national parties seem to have kept a little bit. Obviously, there's always rumours, but they tend to go out just before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember the Sam Gima one at conference. It was only maybe a few hours before he was announced on stage, when actually the rumour mill said, it's happening and things like that.
But we didn't know who, or I didn't know who. And then, of course, there was Joe mischievously put out the words of 16 going on 17.
That's right. That's right.
But by and large, considering we're in a way a party of anarchists, practical anarchists, we are a highly disciplined party.
Yeah.
And we do actually believe that we ought to work together. We are Team Lib Dem, nationally, regionally and locally. And we just don't have the same fights that other parties seem to. Again, when I look at what's happening in Liverpool Labour Party, if I digress slightly, in the Wavertree constituency of the 4 Labour councillors that were elected this May, one's had to resign because of racism, one's been suspended for 4 months because of sexism, one that was only elected last year for the first time has resigned because of bullying inside the Labour Party.
Yeah, it's, the Liverpool Labour Party is a bit of a box of frogs at the moment, isn't it? Where it's just a bit mad.
I tell you, if you kiss them, they don't turn into princesses.
No,
I wouldn't go anywhere near.
But okay, that's really interesting about how that process works, and I think a lot of our listeners will be interested in that. I should point out, because I forgot to, that if any of our listeners want to get in touch with us, you can follow everything to do with Lib Dem Pod on Instagram, on our Facebook page, on Twitter at Lib Dem Pod. You can follow Richard at Councillor Kemp, that's right, and everything to do with me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter with at John Potter LD. We really do appreciate all the viewers. We've now got 500 people following us on our Facebook page, 200 on Instagram and Twitter, and we're getting more and more listeners every time, and we're getting more interaction from you guys, so please do get in contact. We really enjoy it.
Yeah, and if you want to contact the star performer who's just about on the fringes of this, the Twitter handle for the dog is Big Boy.
No, do not search on Twitter Big Boy. Please do not do that.
And his blog site is www, if I could catch that bloody postman, all one word, .wordpress.com. That gets you on to Postman's, not bonus.
Postman's is about there on the Bosley Dog evil scale. Squirrels are top.
Oh, really?
Squirrels are clearly done something wrong to him in a previous life.
I love squirrels.
Yeah, so he would love them if he could catch them.
My wife and not Councillor, Lord Story's wife, Carol, have the idea that when we get too old and decrepit, they're going to push us out in bath chairs so we can talk about the old times and watch the squirrels together. Yeah.
Right, so we've kind of done that, and I think we should probably go on to some of the other news that's going on, and this is obviously our latest goings on in Lib Dem Land podcast. And so next week is key. It looks like there's a lot of toing and froing regarding deal, no deal, will there be a referendum, won't there be a referendum. I have a particular view that actually I think a people's vote second referendum is now more likely than it's ever been.
But how are you judging the situation at the moment, Richard, in regard to Prime Minister? Is that your phone going off again? You are in such trouble.
No one would have heard it. There was a very slight ping. It's about 5 yards
piercing
away.
it was.
That's because his went off last time.
That's right. So what's your take on at the moment? Because it seems like the Conservative strategy is to put something forward to the EU that they know they'll have to reject, paint the EU as the bad guys, go into a general election and beat Labour. That would seem to be my feel of how the Tories are approaching this.
I'm sure that's right. Whether they're going to succeed with that is another matter. Because what we have seen over the last 4 weeks isn't the huge rush of people joining us, but a couple of councillors joined us in the Midlands, Tory councillors joined us in the Midlands. Very interesting hearing a report, which I suspect was true, about something that Keir Starmer was saying, how he'd been out in North London, and the Labour Remainers aren't convinced by the Labour policy on this.
What was really interesting was some of the polling on, not on which party you'd vote for, but your understanding of which party and what their position is. So unbelievably, even though the Lib Dems are very, very anti-Brexit, there's still 6% of people that think Lib Dems are for Brexit. Fair enough. But there's also 4% of people that think the Brexit party are against Brexit.
Yeah.
But what was clearless out of that was actually only about 30% of people knew where Labour were.
Yeah.
Most people didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And that's why they're going to get walloped.
That's linked, of course, to the derision in which their leader is held. I mean, the two things are quite closely linked.
And they were very lucky in a sense, Labour, because that Labour conference was utter chaos.
Yeah, until
the Supreme Court Justice ruling the day after.
Yeah.
Which completely saved their bacon.
Yeah, they were just going to have Tom Watson going on stage to slam Jeremy Corbyn
and put forward. I mean, and you can see it even with in local Labour parties. We have a Labour cabinet member here in Preston, a young lad, who basically said, "I am delighted at this outcome because Labour is not a Remain party." And other members of his cabinet member would disagree with that with every fibre of their body. Yeah. And these ructions aren't going away. But the idea that Labour will go into a general election with no position on Brexit.
No. Well, they have got a position.
It's to not campaign. No one
understands it. Yeah. We're going to go and create a deal with the EU, which we've got no possible chance of getting, because they want to abandon freedom of movement, which is one of the basic tenets. We're going to do that in 3 months. Then we're going to have a referendum in which you can vote for or against it, but we won't campaign.
Yeah, well, no, at that point, they may campaign against their own deal.
Yeah, well, some of them have said they will. And,
but it's
a shambles.
But and no one is going to vote for that. And that's what kind of the Tories are hoping for. Yeah. They're hoping, because at the moment the Labour are utterly useless.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and it also reflects in another way, because not only is Jeremy Corbyn clearly the most unpopular opposition leader ever. Well, as long as they've been recording it. But if you look at who do want to be Prime Minister, after just over 2 months, Joe Swinson is beating Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting, because I don't know if everyone knows that one of the best indications of electoral success in a general election tends not to be the party polls. It tends to be the leadership ratings.
Presidential poll.
Because as we all know, as general elections get closer, that kind of personality-driven thing, do you want Ed Miliband or David Cameron? And it destroyed Ed Miliband. He's in the pocket of Alex Salmond and things like that. Yeah. And so actually for Joe to be polling this well already
at this time,
is really, really promising for the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
But what happens next week? Well, I think actually let's go back to a slightly wider point. Are we leaving on October 31st?
I think even if there is a potential deal with Varadkar recommending, of course he can't make it to the rest of the EU, I don't see how you can get that through quickly. Because that would affect the withdrawal agreement. There are a series of procedures. So I would guess that if, God forbid, I was Boris Johnson, I'd say, I'm going to have 3 months. We've agreed the basis. No problem with 3 months because we're going to do A, B, C, D and A. And
I can't see him getting anything that's any different to the May deal.
No.
It might be tiny tweaks, but...
The question is, will he be able to package it to look as though it's substantially different?
Yeah.
And it won't be.
And that will be the other strategy, because I think that what I was talking about before about him blaming the EU, I don't think that's worked. No. I think when you've got such utter chaos in Parliament, it's very difficult to say, well, it's the EU's fault, because everyone thinks, no, you can't even agree yourself. So if he could get a deal, get the DUP and the ERG on side, and then try and bind the opposition to say, look, here's your last chance to stop no deal. I think there will be some, and we know there's 20 or so Labour.
Well, there were 18 in total signed that letter earlier this week.
That would probably cave.
Yeah.
Whether that is enough, I mean, don't forget some of the Tory rebels that lost the whip. I think Ken Clarke has voted for every deal, has voted for all the May deals.
But I think they're a bit disgruntled at the moment.
And you know, and they have no incentive to help Boris Johnson whatsoever.
Yeah. It was a good move, I must say, that we have said, as I understand it, has been cleared throughout that we won't fight Dominic Grieve.
Yes, that we are not going to stand a parliamentary candidate against him,
And that is interesting. I know we're wandering around a bit, but again, I look at the Labour Twitter accounts. You'll take any bloody Tory on, won't you? Yeah. Well, actually, folks, if you're in the Labour Party, you've got to get some Tory people voting for you, because you haven't got enough.
And the success of Tony Blair and those the 3 elections he won was actually appealing to moderate Tory voters.
Absolutely. And it's no good criticising them as being fascists and what have you. Oh yes, and now will you vote for us? I think I know what the answer is.
Yeah, and this is why the general election could be so useful for the Lib Dems and good for the Lib Dems is, so the Tories are going to struggle. They're going to lose their seats in Scotland. I can't see them holding on to one of them. All 12, I think they'll go. Yeah. I think they'll lose seats in London.
Yeah.
And I think they'll lose...
will Labour in London.
And I think the Tories will lose seats in the southwest to the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
Now, they want to compensate that by winning Leave areas in the north and the Midlands, which is far from... I
think it's bonkers.
I can't imagine Newcastle or Sunderland or wherever voting suddenly complete switching. Now, obviously... We're going to leave the fact whether there'll be an electoral pact with the Brexit Party, because I don't think that's going to happen now.
The
really.
egos are too great.
Big, yeah. And I think the Tories might try and get round the Brexit Party by having and Lord Lamont on Newsnight last night was saying he thinks now it's probable that the Conservatives will go in with a no-deal basis to their manifesto. Vote for us, you get a no-deal Brexit.
And that brings 60 Conservative MPs almost out for the Lib Dems.
Yeah, and so all those moderate Tories have to go somewhere. Yeah. They are not going to vote for a Jeremy Corbyn-led Labour Party. So that is a real option for the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
Labour's electoral prospects, I just can't see them doing any better than what they did in 2017. I don't know where they're going to pick up, where they intend to pick, because they might lose some in Scotland again.
Yeah.
I don't see them picking up vast amounts in the north or in the Midlands, because they have a lot. They have a lot of them anyway.
Most of them, yeah.
So they might lose in in London.
Yeah. And I think that their main pressure is going to be in university cities.
Yeah. Cambridge, for example.
Liverpool and Manchester. In Liverpool, 3 out of the...
and Preston, sorry, I should say. University, yeah.
No, we were talking about real cities.
Yourself.
But in Liverpool, 4 of the constituents, if I remember rightly, certainly 3 of them voted easily Remain.
Yeah.
They are, as I look at the wards around the university, into the more middle class areas, as people develop their jobs, heavily Remain wards. and we know what they're thinking
Yeah.
about the Labour Party. It comes back to what we were saying almost at the beginning. It is Corbyn, it's Remain. They see a fractured Parliament, but certainly in many places they see a fractured Labour Party.
And it comes across, even on our door, my ward is quite long in a sense, where it starts off in quite an urban area and then stretches out into the suburbs of Preston. And I go knocking on doors in the further suburbs, which used to be Tory controlled. And, and it's quite interesting to see, because there used to be, say, 60% Tory, this particular polling district. It's now over 50% Lib Dem. But you go there and without fail, I can't remember the last time we've had Labour people in that ward, in that polling district. Yeah. Some of them former Labour members, current Labour members, who will not vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
No. I've got a by-election which comes up in next Thursday in Princes Park ward. It's a ward that we've only won with 1 seat out of 3 when we had all-ups in 2004, since the ward was basically formed in 2074, so we're not going to win it, I don't think, but we will do very well there. But I was talking yesterday to a Labour member who'd been out in a team around the ward, and basically the doors were just getting slammed in their face in areas that they need to do well in. The delight, he was someone who's been around a long time, and he was saying the canvassers he was with, young momentum people, must have said, I don't like that Jeremy Corbyn. The abuse, you've got to, he's the Messiah.
Yeah. How could you say that?
Yeah.
How could you say that?
He will do this, he'll do that, and the door was...
But we saw it in, and like I said, I was in the committee room for the Brecon and Radnorshire by-election, and the upper Swansea Valley, which was the bit of that was the Labour area, disappeared for Labour. And actually that's when the Tories knew we were probably going to take that seat, is actually the strength of the Lib Dem vote in an area that had been previously very strongly Labour. Yeah. That was key. Yeah.
Now, of course, all this is leading to discussions nationally, way above our pay grade, as are there 100 seats where there should be some sort of pact? Green, Lib Dem, probably not Labour.
Well, they'll never do it with us. It's in their constitution.
Well, theoretically, it's in ours in a way. We say we'll fight every seat, but we don't say it in quite the same language. Independence, Change UK, there's a party called Renew Party. Can we agree to at least have a common seat? But I think that we will get some surprises. And my advice to everyone at the moment in Remain constituencies is work out where your Remain vote is.
You say Ramon as Dominic Cummings has got into your head.
That's all he will get into, okay.
But yeah, you're right. And luckily, Lib Dems, we know, because we used it in the European elections, every constituency has data where we believe or have got data from surveys of where that Remain voters are. And if you can target them as part of your strategy for a general election or for helping in your next local elections,
absolutely,
it's a wonderful resource you've got at your
fingertips. And even if you don't use that, and there is a lot, so we looked at another ward where there's a by-election pending and found we had about 3,300 contactable people, of which probably, if I remember right, about 900 were former Ds and Ps, definites and probables that we found. The rest was information about likely voting intention. Now, some of that will be wrong, but a lot of it, when you then tie that information up with using your nose, so where would I target in Liverpool? Where am I targeting? There's no secret about this. I'm targeting the A, Bs and C ones at the moment. We're doing work in other wards as well, but we could win a seat like Wavertree by getting the Remainers out and other people saying, I'm not going to go and vote for Corbyn, and the Tories are almost irrelevant, so I don't have them in the conversation.
Now, we can still continue with this episode. I think we're on one good form, because one thing we haven't talked about is Lib Dem Strategy, really. Now, there's a lot we could talk about Lib Dem Strategy, but we'll crack on in this podcast, so it might be a bit longer than usual, folks. Okay, so what is the current Lib Dem strategy? It seems that we are, given the news that Angela Smith, one of the independent come Lib Dem MPs, is now going to fight Altrincham and Sale West. Now, Altrincham and Sale West was one of the areas in the Euros where we topped the poll in the northwest, and that is now being mirrored with other, say Chuck and Ramuna going to the City of Westminster and things like that, where Lib Dem Strategy appears to be, even if we haven't had the most electoral success in the past, for some of these new MPs to go and fight in areas where we know there's a strong Remain vote.
Yeah.
But it's a risk.
Yeah.
Because coming from 7% to win is a huge ask.
Yeah, and perhaps we won't do that in most of them. But as we've discussed in previous podcasts, then why do we do it? So why would we take on Altrincham and Sale? It's because we see not only the potential for one election, but election after that, if we do things right. And again, as we've discussed before, what I found on the doorstep with the type of people joining us is that Brexit is only a proxy for small L liberalism. When we break through with them on this one, what is the key issue, then do we break through and say, do you agree with us on education, health,
And it's a bit like what we do on a local level. Sometimes we break through as being the local champions. You know, how many people vote for us in our wards or have voted for us who wouldn't probably naturally consider themselves a Liberal, but vote for us because we win them on one issue, because we do the work locally.
Or because they see us on every issue, whether they agree with us or not on them, actually.
That's right. So, it's an interesting conundrum, that, for Dems. And we actually had a question from one of our listeners saying he's in a seat that is unlikely to be won in a general election. He has local elections next year, but his seat will have an MP who has some level of prominence. You know, so someone, you know, I'm not going to give away the chat because but it actually, you know, it's a well-known MP. If this
not ours, I assume.
Not ours, no. So they're in opposition. So again, they're in that kind of category where they got a base kind of 7%, 10% of the vote last time, and I asked for our opinion on what he thinks they should do about the general election. And the response I gave him was saying, use the general election to help your local elections next year.
Absolutely.
And because and he says, because there might be certain media about this particular MP, and I said, well, you can still do general election electioneering, but do it in the wards you want to have an impact for your locals. So if you're going to have a street stall or a launch event or something like that, do it in the wards you're going to target.
Absolutely. They in old sailing ship terms, they had a phrase, one hand for the ship, one for yourself.
Oh, okay.
And so I would be saying to people like the questioner, first of all, you can't get out to a target seat, maybe 20 miles away, you can't do it too often, but try and go a couple of weekends to help that key seat. Yeah. The rest of the time, and for those people who won't travel anyway, which is a lot of them, pick one or two wards. Yeah. Which of the wards you're going to pick? Look at the information that's on Connect, or just use your nose again.
Yeah. And hopefully local parties, because actually we had our AGM last night, and we have now selected our defending seat candidates, our target seat candidates, and our development seat candidates, not just for next year, but for the county elections the year after. Yeah. Get them in place. So if someone does come along and volunteer, they can say, actually, you have a plan for what you can do locally. Because like I said, not everyone will want to go to a target seat. We understand that. And I got myself in a little bit of hot water because I put I thought a fairly innocuous post on a Facebook group about, you know, we mustn't, and we've had this conversation, well, we mustn't stretch ourselves too thin as LibDems, like we did in 2010 when Clegg Mania happened. Suddenly we thought we were going to win seats, we were going to win 300 seats. The likelihood is we're not. And so I posed the question, what would you rather have? 30 MPs and second places in hundreds of seats, or 80 MPs that we just focus more of our energy on? And for me, it's about getting those 80 MPs rather than 30, because they're the shop window. It gives us more short window. But maybe I'm wrong. You know, I mean, I think you'll agree with me on that.
I certainly do, yeah.
But we are always in a position where we should be challenged on these things. And so a couple of people said, well, is this not our opportunity? Is this our opportunity to do something? You know, is there a difference between 80 and 30 MPs in the grand scheme of things?
There's a huge difference. You get far more airtime. You have far more resources. You have far more clout in the House of Commons. You have MPs who can go out. So, for example, I was at a big health service event this week, and there was a Labour and Tory MP there. There wasn't one of us. That was an event with about 1,500 people to them. Wouldn't it be nice to have had the Lib Dem secretary, shadow secretary? So we tend to think of campaigning only as campaigning, knock on the door or the leaflet, but actually it's campaigning with the pressure groups, the professional organisations, and having 80 MPs just gives you a depth, as we had when we had 60.
And actually, and one of the things about having the MEPs has given us a little bit of infrastructure and money and staffing that we wouldn't normally have. These are now people who are paid, who can do research, who can help out, say, the Northwest area or something like that, that can do it. Whereas I do, and again, I'm not critical of anyone who has an opinion of it, but I do understand the thought where I say, well, is this our opportunity? In response to that is, how do you, your momentum will be destroyed. If, say, this is the Lib Dems' big chance, and they went up by 10 MPs or something like that.
Let's look at very recent history and what happened with Change UK. In my mind, they made an absolute mistake by standing in the European elections. So they were doing quite well, they were bubbling on, getting publicity,
At the start of that campaign, they were polling at the same rate as the Lib Dems. And we were worried about whether we were going to have a poor Euros because they were going to siphon off too much of our vote.
But they didn't know what to do. They had no infrastructure. They had no one putting leaflets out anywhere. They had no one knocking on doors anywhere. And what happened to them? They, you might say, did quite well for a new party. What was it, 6 or 7% nationally? Something like that. So it wasn't bad. And what's happened to them since?
Because they didn't get over that threshold. And it's the same with MPs. The Firstpastthepost system is rotten.
Well, that wasn't the Firstpastthepost system.
I know, no, but I'm saying,
it's even worse.
So I mean, with the MEPs and the DeHont system, they had to get roughly 9% to get a seat here in the Northwest, and they didn't hit it. So, and again, it's the same with Firstpastthepost, where might get, I mean, and the UKIP suffered this, and the Greens get a lot. You have millions and millions of votes, but if they're not concentrated in any areas, you don't get any MPs. And what do we want the story to be of the Lib Dems after the next general election? Because if we have kind of 30 or 40 MPs, they'll go, there'll be it's like, so...
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't mind that, considering we started off this election with 12.
But you know what I mean.
So we've got to have realistic expectations. And the story's got to be there's a solid block of people, as we were saying before, of the calibre of Luciana Berger, of Heidi Allen, Chuka Ramuna. Look at those 80 people. They're the bedrock from which we can then go on to form a government. Because I can tell you one thing, let's say, we're going to get 325 MPs. We couldn't staff a government with competent people. No. Not that we don't have good people. But there's an apprenticeship involved in all this.
And you've seen what happens with MPs that aren't properly prepped, with Jared Amara and people like that, where and you've talked about councillors, again, you see it on a local level, some local parties are so desperate for candidates, they put forward, and they are just not suitable. And eventually they resign, or they do something stupid or something like that.
And you spend all your time firefighting internally. That's the Labour Party is at the moment, to some extent the Tory Party. Is instead of taking the fight out there, which is where it needs to be. It's very good we can do hand gestures and things.
It is good. Are you enjoying it, viewers? It's very good, interactive.
I was told I had a Mohican before.
You did, you had one hair that was pointing up. We sorted it out just before. But I think generally the strategy is right, and again, from that post I put up, some people were saying, why aren't you saying, are you saying our area doesn't matter? And I said, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not in a target area. I'm not in a target seat. I will use the general election as a way of people having a good Remain MP option in myself,
Yeah.
but I will also be there to use it to promote our local party, to show some of the success we've had locally, and to bolster our chances of winning next year in the council elections. Or in whatever. And we were talking just last night in our AGM, and we've talked about it previously, these new members that we've got, thousands and thousands of them. I mean, our local party membership is nearly 5 times what it was during coalition now. What's the best way of engaging with those people? Well, it's during a general election.
Yeah.
Big issue politics will get people excited. And they might get into pothole politics, or they might only be interested for the next general election. But it's an opportunity for you.
Because we always know that, I think even in our bad elections, 2015 and 17, we got people joining us. Because people do. People become more aware of politics. And as you said, some of them actually stick. So, of course, I'd love there to be a Lib Dem government. But I would be very satisfied if we had 60, 70, 80 MPs of good people, and because this isn't either or, as for the reasons we said before, where we've started to develop some wards for next year so we can take control of councils. We should never underestimate what a good Lib Dem council can do.
Yeah, and even though it gets no press coverage, because you've got to think the amount of councils we now control, whether or have elected mayors or anything like that, where there are Liberals doing fantastic work across the country. They may get bugger all public praise for it, but actually they are living our philosophy.
And my guesstimate is that they're responsible for spending something like £9.5 billion a year, and they influence far more because of their role as council leaders with the health service, universities and what have you. And we do underestimate that. Going back to the presidential thing, that's one of the reasons I wanted councillors to be far more aware. If there's a press release, let's say, about health, why aren't they quoting the cabinet member in Portsmouth first to say this is what Lib Dems are doing, and then the parliamentary spokesman saying, and this is how we're going to apply this to the green paper, the white paper, or the bill.
And we're very lucky. We have one of our councillors works for a different local party, and he has access to some of the information. And he asked a very sensible question last night where we had our full council, just asking about pension credit. You know, there is the millions upon millions here in the northwest that are not getting claimed. What are the Labour group doing about it in Preston? And the answer was they couldn't even tell you which cabinet member was responsible. And that's why we need more councillors and we can give more strength to those councillors. The better we will be as kind of effective opposition or as leading councils, but also the better it will be for areas.
And again, if we just take policy development and the opportunity to respond, when you're down to 8 MPs, then 12, now 19, they don't have time to provide the leadership to do the research in a way that would relate local, national together with campaigning. 60, 70, 80 of them, there will be a sizable research function in the House of Commons, there'd be a sizable media function.
And the amount of prominence we would get, because if we do get to that sort of level, would be ahead of the SNP. So we would be the third party.
Moving back into the traditional offices.
But, and better short money, more airtime on the BBC,
probably more
questions.
Select committee chairs. We've only got one. Well, we've got 2 actually, because we've acquired one with Sarah Wollaston.
No, so that kind of rounds it up nicely. I think that's a pretty good summary of where we're at.
Go for it.
Go.
Woo!
Now, what happens? So I am heading off to Japan next week for 3 weeks. Thank you very much. So we are filming more of these now to kind of keep you covered while we're away. But this was our latest news one. We understand next week anything could happen next week. You know, they're making Parliament sit on a Saturday for only the 4th time since the Second World War, I think is or it may even be the First World War, but it's unprecedented
it happened the last time, if I remember rightly, in 1982 with the Falklands.
Yeah, that's right. So
we could be going to war. By the time you get the second one that we're going to record, John and I could be in khaki.
Yeah, we thought it's very slimming. No, but thank you so much for watching and listening, and however you're receiving this podcast, we really appreciate it. Like I say, go on to @LibDemPod on all our social media things. Do share it. Do share this podcast. Let your friends know about it. We are growing, but would love even more of you to listen to us.
Yeah, and once again, can we say to the people in Portsmouth, Ohio, we're both able to come after the general election to a town hall event with you. Is that all right, John?
This is now a recurring joke. With people, so anyone who
probably turned off now.
Anyone who listens to us at the last jokes says, why the heck do they keep on mentioning Portsmouth, Ohio? And just to recap, it's because we get stats of where our listeners come from or are listening to us, and Portsmouth, Ohio suddenly has had a huge spike in LibDems, and I assume that there's some sort of data provider VPN service based there.
I prefer to think there's some good liberals in the Democratic Party looking for campaigning techniques. You saw it here first, folks, and for a very reasonable fee, we'll go and do some work over
We will,
there.
absolutely. We're absolutely, it's a nice time of year to go.
Well, I was thinking summer.
Okay, that's fine. After
that's it. Have we finished?
I think we're finished, but no, thank
See
you
again soon.
Thank you so much for watching and listening for the first. Oh, bloody hell, Potter!
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, go on.
So thank you so much for listening and watching us, and we hope to see you again soon.